entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. You said it earlier in the conversation. You were like, you're not sharing anything that hasn't already been around for, dozens, hundreds, or if not thousands of years, especially when you go back to Stoicism and, Marcus Aurelius and all those guys, right? And these are, I'm just going to repeat for the audience, and then, do the best, do the basics, earn the right to be confident, but maintain humility, and crystal clear on your vision, but focus on the process.
You nailed it.
Those are, I don't want to say they're elementary, but it's not rocket science, right?
No, it's definitely not.
So
I'm a very simple man, and I don't say that to denigrate myself. I say that with pride. I actually love the fact that I have simplified my life, hence the neon sign above my head, to the point that I just focus on a handful of core beliefs and principles, and that's what I use to navigate the world. And that simplicity has increased my fulfillment tenfold. See, one of the other premises that I live by is that complexity undermines execution.
Yep.
That the more complex we make things, the less likely we are to do them. So let's just take wellness and physical fitness, for example. If someone watching or listening to this right now, if you come to the conclusion and you have the self-awareness, and I will say the courage to look in the mirror and say, I don't like where I am physically right now. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like my body right now. First and foremost, just know that is okay to feel that way. That you're not alone, I promise you. And that while it may not feel good to feel that way, you're taking an important first step, and that is having the self-awareness to acknowledge it. Because self-awareness is always the first step to improvement. Because we'll never improve something we're unaware of, and we'll never fix something we're oblivious to. So the fact that you can look in the mirror and say, I don't like where my physical wellness is at present, is a massive first step and a very courageous one. But the reason I say that is then the next step, if you think your next step needs to be tomorrow morning, you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and you have to take a cold shower, and then you have to climb a mountain, and then you have to meditate, and then you have to have a green smoothie. If you think you have to, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Agreed.
All you have to do tomorrow is go for a 15-minute walk. That's it, full stop. We don't need to make it any more complex than that. See, when you make it more complex, when you say tomorrow I'm going to buy a Peloton bike and I'm going to hire a nutritionist and I'm going to throw out everything that's in my pantry, and the more complex you make it, the less likely you are to actually do it. So to anyone that fits that hypothetical that I just said, my challenge to you, and I say this with all the love and compassion I have in my heart, just wake up tomorrow and go for a 15-minute walk. If you're in a climate where you can do that outdoors, that's great. If not, do you have access to a treadmill? If not, is there a local mall or somewhere where you can just go walk around? But just go for a 15-minute walk and make that your only goal. And then try to repeat that on day 2. And then continue to that streak of 15-minute walks. And here's what will slowly start to happen. First of all, you'll start to feel good when you go for that 15-minute walk. And 15 minutes will turn into 20, will turn into 30, will turn into 45. Then what will happen is when you get back from your 45-minute walk, you don't feel like having a Pop-Tart because you know you just did something good for your body. So you're actually going to be more inclined to maybe eat some oatmeal or have some eggs or whatever. Like you're going to make a healthier decision. And then while you're sitting there and you're having your healthier breakfast, maybe you choose to meditate for a few minutes. Maybe you don't. Maybe you choose to pop on an inspirational video on YouTube that makes you feel good instead of doom scrolling on social media. So what you'll see is when you start to make very small changes and very small investments in this one area, it will start to pick up some momentum, and it'll make the friction less for you to start doing other things. And you continue that, and 6 months later, your morning routine is completely different than it was before. You're feeling and looking 1,000 times better than you did. And it all started because you just made a commitment to go on one 15-minute walk. So I'm trying to help folks break things down and simplify them. So don't lean into it and make them more complex than they need to be.
Yeah, I love the piece at the beginning where you're like, if you're feeling pain or you're feeling like you look at yourself and you don't like how you look, don't Don't be mad about that. Don't,
No.
actually, and as a matter of fact, most people move away from pain than they're more driven to move away from pain than they are to move towards pleasure. So that threshold that we kind of get to that makes us take action, and and then hearing what you're saying is don't make that action so complicated that it makes it more painful than the
Yeah.
pain you're already in, which is what happens, right?
Yes.
And I think that this is probably an interesting conversation, at least from my perspective, is that when I'm looking down here at these three pieces that I wrote, back to the basics, or best do the basics, earn the right to be confident and have humility, and then crystal clear vision, but focus on the process. It's like, what are the things, like we said, like it's not rocket science. It's not like earth shattering stuff, but where I think, I'm the kind of guy that's like, how do we get rubber to the road? Like, how do we take action that is, small in the beginning, which is what you just basically said, and create some sustainability and, a new compelling future. But what are the roadblocks that why people don't do this stuff? Because it is pretty elementary, and there's not one person that couldn't do this. And let's face it, there's very few climates on this planet that you can't go out for a walk. You might have to put a snowsuit on, or snowshoes, but you can go for a walk. Like, it's never that bad. It's never that bad for a consecutive amount of days that it should interrupt your kind of your pattern.
Yes.
So what are the things that you see, or that you saw working with some of these athletes, that just allowed them to be able to trigger this stuff over and above the people that choose not to?
Right before I answer that, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
glad that's the direction we went. I just want to make sure that folks understand that this framework can apply to any area of your life. Maybe you feel good about your body and your physical fitness, but your business isn't where you want it to be. So make the goal tomorrow morning, you're going to make 3 outward sales calls first thing in the morning. Like, that's it. You're not going to change anything else, but you're going to be proactive and make 3 outbound sales calls. Maybe your relationship's not where you want it to be. So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you're going to do is write down 3 things about your partner that you love, or 3 things that you're grateful for. And that will start to help reframe the way you see that person. So maybe you'll be a little more compassionate and tolerant when they start to irritate you a little bit, because you've reprogrammed your mind to say, let me remind myself every morning why I love this person and why I'm with them, instead of constantly focusing on the reasons that they frustrate me or annoy me, if you're kind of having that little bit of an issue. So we could look at this through this lens for any area of life. But the point is, start super small and start with something that is very actionable, and don't try to do more than that in advance. Now, to answer your question, the roadblocks, well, there's a couple. First and foremost, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room, that there's not a whole lot of money to be made in focusing on the basics. So almost everything that we are pitched, and all the advertising and everything we see, they want us to buy the Peloton bike. They want us to hire the nutritionist. They want us to, and I get it. And not that there's anything wrong with those things, but no one is making a ton of money with a business that says, go for a 15-minute walk, eat some oatmeal, and sit quietly with your thoughts. I'm saying that for free because I don't even know how I would monetize that. So society has gotten us to believe that it can't be that simple. Oh man, it has to be. Let's be honest. The whole key to physical fitness is to eat clean and move your body. Full stop. Now, obviously, there's some nuance to that. There's some nuance to the definition of eating clean, and there's some nuances to, well, how often do you move your body? How hard do you move? I get it. But the base principle is in there, which is just eat clean and move your body. But there's not a lot of money in saying those two things. There's only money in saying, well, we have a pill or a powder or something that will replace eating clean. So just do this because it'll be way easier. Or we have this piece of machinery that don't worry about doing, going for walks and lifting weights. Like, just do that. So inherently, that's kind of what we're up against. Is society leads us to believe that the basics won't work, that we need the next thing, which costs money, in order to make them work.
People are looking for the easy way out too, right? It's like, oh, I'll just take a shot of Ozempic and I'll lose 20 pounds.
Well, what's so funny is, what's easier than the basics? Like, I can't think of anything easier than going for a 15-minute walk every single morning. And if for any reason that is not easy to you, Let's just say you're bedridden because you're so overweight you can't even get out of bed. Again, then have a smaller goal than walking for 15 minutes. Like figure out something, and in that case, maybe you would need a medical professional's intervention to be able to help put you on that course. But at the end of the day, the number one thing we have to do is stop playing the comparison game. I am very into my own personal health and wellness and physical fitness. I don't do what David Goggins does. Geez, just watching that guy's videos makes me
It
tired.
makes me want to
But I
puke.
don't play the comparison game because I'm not trying to be David Goggins.
Yeah.
Now, what he's doing is working really well for him, and I support that. And I think we should have a lot of different voices and a lot of different messages out there. But if you happen to be, at a level 0 right now, and David Goggins is a level 100, I would rather you start your next step to be at a 3, and then a 5, and then a 10. Don't try to be David Goggins tomorrow morning because you're setting yourself up for failure. And then when you do end up falling short, then most likely you'll start to add some shame and some guilt onto the fact that you weren't able to do all of those things. And now you feel worse than you ever did before. And now not only do you don't like your body, now you feel defeated. And it just creates this circular effect. And it's almost like a tornado that sucks people into it. So I want to encourage folks to be able to start small. But one other point on the basics, and even I can acknowledge this, many times the basics can become mundane. They can become monotonous. And I get that. So you have to find, there's 2 things you can do. One, there are ways that you can find to make those basics more enjoyable without detracting from the premise of the basic. So an example might be if you don't love going for a 15-minute walk, but you really love listening to music, well, then listen to music on your 15-minute walk, or listen to a podcast, or call a friend and talk to them for the 15 minutes. There can be a way to make the walk that you don't enjoy more enjoyable by supplementing it with something that you do. Now, notice those 2 things have to be in alignment. I didn't say go for a walk and eat an ice cream cone on your walk, because those 2 things would be conflicting. So you need to figure out something that is in alignment. And then the second is, don't focus so much on the specific action, but focus on what that action is leading you to do. When I would have players work on basic footwork movements, and inevitably they'd say, "Coach, like, this is so boring." And I would wink and smile and put my arm around them and say, "Is winning boring?" Well, no, winning's not boring. All right. Well, this is a prerequisite to winning. If you have good footwork and good execution of the fundamentals, we will win more games. And there ain't nothing boring about winning. So same thing in any of these areas. There's nothing boring about having a body you feel good in. There's nothing boring about having an incredibly connected and loving relationship. There's nothing boring about having a thriving business, making money doing something you love. Well, if those are the end of the rainbows that you want, then on some level, you have to be willing to invest in the monotony and the mundaneness of the basics, because that's what provides the foundation to have those things.
Yeah, I love this because my how I kind of gleaned this is exactly what you said in number 3, which is, you've got to be crystal clear on the vision, but you have to be able to focus on the process. And focusing on the process is what's going to get you to the vision.
Yes.
And that to me is, really fundamentally what you're saying there. It's like, I ran into some guy at the gym a couple days ago, and, he was working out with a guy I know and a buddy of mine, and he's a pretty intense guy. And so he's like, "Okay, let's go. Like, and you could tell like he was like, this is probably his first or second day in the gym. And I just said to the guys, like, in between they finished their sets, and my buddy was talking to my wife, and I said to the guy, he's like, "Do you have any tips?" And I said, "Yeah, just go slow. Go
Yeah.
slow, man. I go get in here 4 days a week. Don't set a goal to lose 20 pounds in a month. Set a goal to lose a half a pound a week, or, a pound a month. In a year, you'll be down 12 pounds. And it'll be revolutionary for you."
Absolutely.
And he had a solid 20, at least 20 to lose. And then I said, in 2 years, it's like you'll be exactly where you wanted to be. And it's only 2 years. If you live 100 years, 2 years is 2% of your life to get back into shape. It's not that hard.
I'm so glad you said that. We have to be willing to reframe, and we do live in a microwave society where everyone wants everything immediately, and that's something I've struggled with in my life. I mean, if you were to list, you know, all of the all of the traits of a human being, I skew towards the low end when it comes to patience, like natural patience. I'm
Me too,
naturally
bud.
a patient person, so once again, I have compassion for that. But what I've noticed is kind of an epidemic in our society, and I don't know who coined this terminology. It wasn't me, but it really resonated. Is if you want to be the noun, then you have to do the verb. And here's what it is. So a lot of people say, I want to be an author, but they don't feel like writing a book. They say, I want to be a bodybuilder, but they don't feel like doing some push-ups. They say they want to be, whatever it may be, but they don't want to actually do the work that's required to be that thing. Well, if you want to be an author, guess what that means? That means you write. That means you need to write, and writing a book is usually, and I've written two and I'm working on my third at present. It's not something you just sit down and write in one sitting. Like it's a process. It's an accumulation of thoughts. And every person has to find their own process. But at the end of the day, if my goal is to put another book in the world, I have to write it. I have to be willing to do the basics and to write it. So whatever these things are that you aspire to be or to have, you've got to be willing to put in the work to do that. And that just tends to be something that most people don't feel like investing in. And for that, there's not a whole lot that any of us can do to help. If you want to look a certain way, then you need to start aligning your habits and your decisions so that over time, that process will create how it is that you want to look and feel, or the business that you want, or the relationship that you want. I cannot stress enough that this framework has such high utility. It applies to every single area of our life. So for me, when I look at the buckets of where do I want to excel in my life? Well, I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best speaker I can be. And adjacent to that is the best business owner I can be, because it is my own business. I want to be as physically fit and mentally fit as I can be. When I'm in a romantic relationship, I want to be the best loving and supportive partner that I can be. So I'm looking at these different areas, and then I just work backwards and go, okay, well, what are the handful of fundamentals that I need to work towards mastery of to be the best father I can be? What are the traits that I would think the best father would have? And then that's what I need to work on. What do I believe are the traits or characteristics of the best speakers in the world? That's what I need to focus on. The best business owners, the best husbands or partners, however you want to term it, and look at that, and then just work backwards from there, and just go, okay, well, how do I align my standards? How do I make decisions? And how do I exercise discipline so that I'm in alignment with being the best I can be in those different areas?
This is such good advice for people. I mean, I so much appreciate you sharing it with everybody. I'm curious, like you talk about, you have so many uh, um, topics that you speak about like it's insane. Um, what is one or two that you think, before we end this conversation, like you'd like to share with people that are relevant to what's happening in society today and where we're at, or how to not even necessarily get them unstuck, but get to the next level? I'm curious what you, as a critique of your own work, what would be the ones that you would say, hey, I think these are the pillars?
One of the biggest ones that I think will help in every single area of our life, and this is something you're doing a masterful job of now, and that is actively listening, is learning how to become a better listener. Listening is the underrated part of communication. I mean, most people, when they hear the word communication, they think about talking or speaking or writing, but it's the listening that is where you get the true gold. And what I find helps when it comes to being an active listener is to do the best you can to refrain from making judgments and assumptions, and try and keep an open mind, and when in doubt, lean in with curiosity and fascination. One of the problems that we live in society today is we live in a very divisive culture, and we live in a divisive culture in a variety of capacities. But the one that gets highlighted the most is politically, is, you've got one side and the other side, and those two sides very, rarely tend to agree on anything.
Right.
And what I found is regardless of what side you're on or what it is that you believe or whatever your convictions are, refrain from making assumptions about the other group or about other people. Refrain from making judgments, because I promise you they're going to be misfounded judgments, and instead lean in with curiosity. Instead, lean in with fascination. Dwayne, you and I are just now getting acquainted and we're learning each other. And certainly we've hit on a couple of things where it appears we have a lot of alignment. We share similar values and thoughts. But I'm willing to bet if we have a long enough conversation, we'll come across something that we think differently on, that we have different perspectives on. And that's okay. To me, that's a great thing. Why in the world would I assume or even have the arrogance to think that you and I would think identical on everything in this world? I mean, I have twin sons. They literally share DNA and they don't have the exact same perspectives and opinions and like even they're different and they're raised in the same household
Right.
and they're still different. So to me, if and when you and I came to a topic where maybe we challenged each other, we thought differently, I would really refrain from the natural temptation to judge you. Dwayne's an idiot. I can't believe he thinks that. Jeez, my goodness, what a moron he is. I would also try not to make assumptions. Well, geez, if he believes that, I bet he also believes this. Oh my. And instead I would lean in with fascination and curiosity. I'd say, Dwayne, at present, I have a very different philosophy than you have, but I'm so curious to know why you believe what you believe. I would love to learn more about how you formulated that perspective or why you feel so strongly the way that you feel. And then if you're open to it, I'd like to share why I feel so strongly about the way I feel. And instead of burning the bridge, we actually create a bridge between us to learn more about it. Now, this doesn't mean that at the end of the conversation, we have to agree or that you have to think exactly what I think. We might leave the conversation and still be very resolute in our own respective convictions, but that's okay. But at least we made the attempt to learn as much as we could about the other person, about the other person's perspective and opinion. And to me, that will form a bond. And that type of civility, that type of respect is something that I think helps us in every area of our life. From parent to child, from spouse to spouse, from speaker to audience, is having that type of open-mindedness. And that is another one of the major pillars that I have shifted in my own life. I promise you, Dwayne, if you knew me a decade ago or further, I was one of the most judgmental, opinionated, made more assumptions than my fair share, and my way was the highway. And if you disagreed with me, you were a complete idiot. And instead, I've learned, boy, not only how much I didn't know back then, but how much more I still need to know now. And don't get it twisted. I still have very strong beliefs and very firm convictions on things, but I always am open-minded to changing my opinion on those things if better information comes around. That if I have an open and conversation with you and I actually ask you insightful questions and I'm fascinated, you might share something that gets me to change the way I'm currently thinking. So none of my beliefs am I gripping with white knuckles and I'm not willing to let go. I can promise you every single thing in my life right now is always open to be tweaked or open to be changed if I'm convinced there's better information out there. And I just try to stay open to that.
Yeah, it's a great message. It's as you were saying, I'm like, God, why don't we teach this in schools with kids? Because it is the fundamental. Um, it's probably the fundamental reason why we find ourselves in political upheaval, relationship upheaval, business upheaval. And you can. And there's probably not a person that's listening to this conversation right now that couldn't reflect on something that happened yesterday or the day before that was caused from a lack of understanding or a lack of flexibility or fascination. And as the word that you used, which is, I love that word. It's if we could be more curious about others, it would lend our flexibility. So I love yes. And you can change. I was the same as you were. I was so rigid and so tight and judgmental. Like that's my saboteur is judgment. And I got to be, I'm always on guard to try to make sure that, it doesn't control me. And I can reduce the time and distance between, when I feel judgment coming up and my response to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also we have to have both self-awareness and some patience with ourselves. As I mentioned very early in our conversation, none of this stuff am I coming from a place of mastery. And many of these things, even though I have upgraded my operating system, I do occasionally revert back to previous ways that didn't serve me. So in full transparency, yeah, I can still have a conversation with someone. They say something, and my immediate internal response is, this person is an idiot. I can't believe they just said that. And then I catch myself saying that and take a deep breath and go, okay, well, that type of conviction isn't going to help. And they are probably thinking that I'm an idiot, and they have every much right to think that as I do. So that's not going to be helpful. That's actually putting up a wall between us. So before I rush to judgment that this person is an idiot, let me lean in a little bit more. So I still will catch myself making assumptions or making judgments. I'm just now quicker to course correct after I do. It used to just be, you're an idiot, I shut the door, conversation's over. Now it's, you're an idiot, wait a second, Alan, maybe I'm the idiot, let's learn a little bit more. So I'm getting better at that process. And you know, it's all of these things that we need to unlearn or retrain or rethink. Just remember that is a progress, that is a process, and to be much more concerned with progress than we are with perfection. I mean, there ain't a single area of my life that I'm anywhere close to perfect. But most areas of my life, I've made pretty good progress in the last several years. And for that, I'm thankful. So I pay way more attention to the direction that I'm going than I do whether or not I'm being perfect at something. Because I don't know that that's an ideal that's achievable. And if it is, it's certainly not sustainable. So I'm just as flawed and fallible as anybody watching or listening to this right now. I accept that. And I just try to do the best I can with what I have wherever I am and keep this thing going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's beautiful, bro. It's beautiful, man. Curious, do you have another piece of content that you're, because that one was stellar. So if you've got another one, I think we should hear it.
Well, so there are a variety of things that I touch on and I speak about, but what it starts with at the kind of the top of the funnel is almost everything I share on stage or on page has to do with performance. And one of the things is redefining the word performance, because most people hear the word performance and they immediately think of athletes, or they think of musicians, or they think of people, actors or someone on stage. And while those are performances, we perform in every area of our life. I mean, I'm performing as a father every day. I'm performing as a member of the community. So I just want folks to feel that how we show up in the world is always has to do with our performance. And now underneath performance, most of the groups that hired me to speak either want me to help their team with individual performance. So how can I help their team with their habits and their mindset and their focus? Sometimes they bring me in because they want me to help with leadership performance. So how can I train their managers or directors to have better personal influence and impact over the people that they lead? Sometimes they bring me in for organizational performance. How can we get everybody on the team playing in the sandbox together nicely? How can I share things on role clarity and accountability and communication? But it's all kind of under that umbrella of performance. And for me, that's my personal goal, is to show up as the best version of myself in all areas of my life as consistently as possible. And the way that I'm doing that now better than I've ever done it in the past is because of these upgrades to the operating system, is because I've changed the way I look at self-imposed limiting beliefs, the way I look at, a scarcity mindset, the way I look at approaching the basics, the way I look at, all of these different things that we've talked about. But the last piece of content that is incredibly sticky and tends to resonate with most people, and I've used this phrase a couple times, I've thrown it in as we've been talking, is this concept that I learned back in 1999 from Coach K, the former men's basketball coach at Duke, is a concept called next play. And next play is basically a way to refocus your lens on what's right in front of you right now. Don't worry so much about what just happened. Focus on what's happening right now. So in basketball, next play is, Dwayne, you just turned the ball over. All right, next play. Dwayne, you just missed a wide open shot. All right, next play. Dwayne, I know the referee didn't call a foul. It happens, man. Next play. It's to get you to stop looking in the rearview mirror at things that can't be changed and get you to focus all of your time and energy and effort into the present moment where you can still make a difference. And that next play concept, I use dozens and dozens of times throughout my day. It's a very quick self-imposed recalibration exercise. But anytime something isn't going my way and my preferences aren't met, or I hit a stumbling block, I just quickly move to the next play. Now, with that being said, there is always a time and a place to learn from the past, to debrief, to watch the game film, and to learn what I could do differently. But it's very rare that the best time to do that is in that exact moment. So if you have a series of sales calls and your first 3 calls don't go very well, you get 3 big fat no's on your first 3 sales calls, are you dragging that negativity and negative energy into the 4th call? Or are you able to wipe the slate clean and go into that 4th call with the same energy and optimism and confidence and excitement as if you had landed the first 3 calls? And that requires a next play mentality. Now, later that evening, you may choose to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, during those first 3 calls, what can I learn from that? What could I have done differently to maybe get a different outcome? So there's a time and a place to revisit and unpack and debrief, but it's not while you're in the middle of your 4th call. So this concept of next play has been vital. And, you and I can right now, we can spitball a list of 20 things that could happen any given day that we have to move to the next play. Your kid backtalks you in the morning, next play. The sales call doesn't go your way, next play. You get in an argument with your spouse, next play. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, next play. You're in the middle of a podcast and you don't say something as eloquently as you'd like, next play.
Story of
And
my
learn
life.
how to move things to the next play. And for me, that mindset, it might be the single biggest game changer in my operating system that's helped with me.
I love that one. I mean, it's so good because people just get stuck and sometimes they are good in one area, but they're not good in the other. Like as you were saying it, I'm like, well, man, that's my golf game. You just, that and somebody cutting me off or something like that. There's a couple of things that just twig me and it's hard to let go. And but then there's other areas where it's very easy to let go because I put more focus and attention to it.
But I can promise you, and I know almost nothing about the game of golf. And if you ever saw my swing at Top Golf with my kids, you would laugh like a hyena. But I can promise you, if you personally can learn how to apply next play or next shot just to your current golf game, it'll radically improve your golf game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that makes world-class golfers world-class golfers. Now, sure, they're so good at the technical aspect that they very rarely hit bad shots. They very rarely have bad rounds or bad days, but they still do. And what makes them remarkable when they have a bad shot is it doesn't compound. Usually their next shot, they're able to course correct and they're right back where they needed to be in the first place because they're willing to wipe that slate clean. But there's one other aspect of next play that I don't talk about a whole lot, but is really important. So we've been talking about it kind of in the moment. Something happens, quickly move to the next play and go on with your day. And that's really how I learned the concept. And like I said, I learned it in 1999 when I read the book Leading with the Heart by Coach K, someone I've always admired and respected. But to be honest, I went the next decade and a half without really understanding how to apply it to my life. Like I understood the concept, but still for the next 15 years, I would get bent out of shape anytime something didn't go my way. I was awful at moving to the next play. Then I started to work at a very prestigious high school here in the Washington, D.C. area, DeMatha Catholic High School, which at the time had a coach named Mike Jones, who's one of the best coaches that I've ever been around. And he implemented that with the team regularly. So when I was working for him from 2010 to 2016, I got to see next play put in everything we did. It was in every workout, every practice, every film session, and every game. Coach Jones would say next play, and he would make this hand gesture, kind of like flipping the page, dozens and dozens of times a day. And it was that immersion that I started to integrate it into my life. And that's when I really started to see that change. So I was a little late to the party. I learned it in 1999, started to see it put in action in 2010. And to be honest, it didn't really become a staple of my operating system for probably another few years. So about 2015. So it's been about a decade that I now have evidence of how well this can work. But what I was going to say is you can also use next play metaphorically when looking at big transitions in life. So when something in life is going to change, whether this is something you choose to change or it's something that's imposed on you, you need to be able to step back and look at the next play. Now, a change that maybe you choose to make, you choose to get married, you choose to have children. Well, as anyone who's done those two things will tell you, your life is drastically different than you were when you were just single and walking around. So how's this next play of my life going to be now that these changes have happened? And then, after that, your kids grow up and move out, and now you're an empty nester. All right, well, what's my next play as an empty nester? I'm getting close to retirement and I'm going to retire from my job. Well, I still got another 30 years on the planet. What's my next play going to be in retirement? Those are all things that we get to choose. Sometimes next plays are imposed on us. You lose a loved one, somebody passes away, you're struck with an illness or a debilitating injury. Your partner decides to leave you and now you're not with them anymore. These things are imposed on you, but you still need to be able to ask yourself, okay, this wasn't my preference. I certainly didn't wish for this to happen, but it's happened. What's my next play going to be now? How am I going to live the rest of my life now that this has transpired? So I try to look at next play in the micro and in the macro and apply it for those exact reasons.
Dude, it sums up my podcast, I think. Like, I love it. It does, because it's like I think we're always trying to move from where we are to where we want to be. And there should always be some type of movement somewhere in some area of your life. And you've covered, all the pillars: business, relationships, children, health. Like that is exactly what this podcast stands for. And so I love the next play concept. It's amazing. And, I mean, brother, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Like these takeaways are so good. And I'm going to say, guys, like, Alan's book, Raise Your Game and Sustain Your Game. If you get a chance, you should get out there and get one of those copies, because you're going to see a lot of this content that is delivered in a way that's easy to follow and executable. And dude, you're killing it. Congratulations. Like, I'm so grateful to have you on the show. From not even knowing me to just going from a whim on a reference from a mutual friend of ours. I'm very appreciative.
Well, I'm equally grateful. We both owe Stu a huge high five. I'm glad he connected us. This was a really fun conversation. I hope it's the first of many that we have both on and off air in the future. But yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. I appreciate the platform, and certainly, as we said, hopefully we touched at least one person that's watching or listening today. What I will say is I take a tremendous amount of pride in being very accessible and very responsive. So anyone watching or listening right now, if anything that Dwayne and I talked about today struck a chord, if you have something you want to ask, something you want to share, anything in between, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm very easily found. My website is alansteinjr.com, and I'm at Alan Stein Jr. on all of the major social platforms. Just shoot me a DM. I can promise you I'll get back to you just as soon as possible. But to me, I'm hoping this is just kind of the first step in creating that ripple effect that you mentioned earlier. And if anyone listening, if you feel like this message would be helpful to your team or to your business, please drop me a line. Would love to discuss ways maybe I can add some value there. But if not, just shoot me a line on any of the social platforms, and let's keep this conversation rolling.
Yeah, you should, guys. You should check out his website. It's your website's amazing, actually, and
Thank
it
you.
really gives a really good, detailed understanding of what Alan's doing. Both from a executional phase, but also a purposeful phase. So it is really purpose driven, and it's great content. So I would really recommend. And I get up to Washington every once in a while for meetings. So I'll next time I get up there, we're gonna have to go out for dinner.
I would love that.
I would love to do that.
Yes, please drop me a line. I would love to make that happen.
Thank you so much, brother, for being on the show. Appreciate you. I think we're a lot alike. We both clapped our hands at the same time. Anyways, dude, it's so good to have you, man.
Likewise.
All right. Peace, brother.